And again, I'd like to welcome you all to today, which is Thursday's session, which will be covering all about Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I hope you all enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and read our disclaimer before we get started. The WildTech DC Senior iPad program, its owners and presenters offer technical assistance. Virtual health well-being information designed for educational purposes only. You should not rely on the information and any applications or topics made by WildTech, including but not limited to mobile and device applications and any social media pages maintained by WildTech, its owners or presenters as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or legal advice. Thank you so much for letting me read the disclaimer. If you cannot see me or hear me or see the screen, please let me know in the chat, and I'd really appreciate that. And let's just make sure our TVs and our cell phones are silenced to the best of our ability, so when we do have our discussions and our question and answer time that we're all able to hear, but also for yourselves so you can get the most out of this experience, okay? Before we get started, to keep meetings organized and avoid talking over each other, I just ask that you use the raise hand feature. You can find it in the toolbar at the top right. You do that by tapping more at the top right, and then you tap raise hand. So during or at the end of each session, each session is gonna be a little different. You have the opportunity to ask a question or, say a reaction or anything along those lines. If you'd like to contribute or ask anything, please raise your hand in Zoom. Again, you do that by tapping more at the top right, excuse me, and then tapping raise hand. So I want everyone in Zoom to please raise their hand. I know that you're here, that you're present, that you're ready to learn, that you have your pen and paper next to you to take down notes, that you feel confident and empowered and independent to ask a question. And, just know that the questions that you guys ask, they are very helpful for myself and, just being a better, instructor each and every day, but also for the others as well, because we're just all trying to learn from each other. So, no question is a silly question. And please feel empowered and confident to ask a question by raising your hand. So thank you to the 17 of you that have raised your hands. Not myself including, that's about half of you all. So thank you so much for raising your hands. So let's just take 30 more seconds. Again, if you have not raised your hand, you tap more at the top right, and then you tap raise hand if you ever have a question, comment, concern, etc. So be sure to know how to raise your hand so that way you can then get your questions and comments and concerns all heard. Okay? Thank you so much. You can lower your hands by hitting lower at the bottom. Again, it says your hand is raised and then it will say lower. So that is how you can lower your hand once the guest or presenter or the host has answered your question. You can lower your hand by hitting lower at the bottom. Okay, so thank you so much to those that have done. We have 4 hands that are still up. So again, just look at the bottom of your screen and just see if it says your hand is raised, make sure you hit lower. Good job, everyone. That was so fast. In addition to raising your hand, if you want to send a, congratulate, encourage, or just send a fun reaction or emoji underneath raise hand. So again, more, and then you see raise hand below that, you'll see these different reactions. So if you want to send a clap or a thumbs up or a heart or a laughing emoji or a celebratory one, or if you want to send any other reaction, you can tap 3 dots. And there are all the emojis that are available on iPad you can send as a reaction. So again, more at the top right and below raise hand, I want everyone to please send a reaction. It could be any emoji. I love your snowflake, Miss Jacqueline. Your halo, Miss Cassandra, I love it. Your thumbs up. Miss Hill, thanks so much. I love all of your hearts. Mr. Hill, you always pick some really interesting emojis. I love it. Oh, Gracie, I love all of the flowers. Those are some of my favorite emojis on Apple services. So Thank you for your celebrations, Miss Juliet. Really appreciate that. So, yes, just utilize the reaction bar during the session just to have a more fun and immersive experience. So, thank you so much for doing that. Last but not least, as some of you have done already, which I appreciate, if you want to communicate non-verbally, you can use the chat to share a greeting like a hello, a good afternoon, good happy Thursday, you know. You can ask a question this way. We may be able to answer it during the session. If it relates to what we're talking about, you can congratulate, encourage others, put resources and information, quotes, pretty much anything in the chat that you'd like to share. You can do that by tap more, again at the top right, but this time you're gonna tap on chat. When you tap on chat, you'll see where it says tap here to chat. You type your message in there, and then you send it using the blue triangle on the right-hand side. So I want everyone in Zoom to please send a chat. Again, it could be anything, just as simple as a hello or a good afternoon or hope you're having a great day. Looking forward to the session, hopefully. And you can use emojis like Ms. Jack. I love your emojis, Ms. Jacqueline. They're so cool. Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, Miss Carolyn, your name is also attached to the message, so you don't necessarily have to write your name in there, Miss Carolyn, but thanks so much for sending a chat. Yeah, emojis, just a simple hello. You never know whose day you might make just by saying that. And like I always say, when you guys get onto Zoom, when I start the meeting, so I would love to see if when you hop on, just take a quick second to send a hello in the chat. And sometimes we're a bit, silent, which is okay. We're still getting ourselves together in the beginning, but it's just nice to send a hello so that we know you're here, right? And present. So thank you for all the lovely chats and the emojis. It just makes it lots of fun. Okay, thank you so much. So today we'll be doing just some did you know, some fun facts, and 10 things in particular you didn't know about Martin Luther King Jr. Then we'll be going into just some more history of the day. Then we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Day and its relation to seniors and their impact on MLK Day. Because yes, they do. Seniors do have a major impact on what we do on MLK Day. So we'll be covering that. And last but not least, we'll be having our discussion where we have some questions just for you to think about and for us to discuss after viewing all the information in today's session. So again, it was a lot of fun creating this and just looking over it and the information, and I hope you learned something new. So first up, I just have some quick videos on Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. and then on the day, and then we'll go into our fun facts, all right? So this first video is again a 1-minute history of Mr. Martin Luther King Jr.
In high school, Martin Luther King Jr. wins an oratorical contest stating, "Black America still wears chains." On the bus ride home, King is forced to stand so white passengers can sit down. To satisfy his urge to serve humanity, King joins the seminary and begins to fight for social justice. After leading the Montgomery bus boycott, the King family home is bombed. He continues on organizing nonviolent protests in Albany and Birmingham before the March on Washington. King wins the Nobel Prize for his dynamic leadership and organizes the Selma to Montgomery marches, expanding his political focus to include poverty and opposition to the Vietnam War. At the height of his political influence, Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the crowning achievement of the civil rights era, would not have been possible without the courage of Martin Luther King Jr.
And that last statement is very true, right? None of that would have been possible without his efforts. So that's a quick 1-minute history of Martin Luther King Jr. Next up again is a quick video on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and what the day is all about.
The third Monday in January is observed as the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., and is an official U.S. holiday. Dr. King's actual birthday is January 15th.
And that's
Dr.
what
King
it
was a
is
church
on
and community
this year.
leader who spoke out against racial discrimination, the unfair treatment of people based on the color of their skin or where they came from. His voice became familiar to millions of people during the Civil Rights Movement, a time when many people were working hard to change unfair laws. These laws prevented many African Americans from using public areas, going to certain schools, or even entering some stores and restaurants. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed people should stand up for what is right and stop injustice any way they can, but never through the use of violence. As recognition for his ideas and dedication, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. The Civil Rights Movement led to historic changes in our country's laws. In 1994, the U.S. government encouraged Americans to use the King holiday as a national day of volunteer action. Now, on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, volunteers across the country donate their time to making a difference. How would you like to volunteer your time on the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
And again, that's just one question to think about during the course of this presentation. So I hope that was, useful and knowledgeable as well. So we all know that Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister from Atlanta, Georgia, who made history as a civil rights activist in the 50s and 60s. He dedicated his life to advocating for desegregation, the right to vote, and labor rights, freedoms the Black community did not have at the time. He spent his life preaching Christian values and organizing nonviolent protests across the South. He led the Montgomery bus boycott in 55 and organized the famous March on Washington in 63, where he gave the famous I Have a Dream speech. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work to end racial inequality through nonviolent measures. And in 1968, King was in Memphis, Tennessee, organizing a national campaign when he was assassinated. And following his death, he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. So, many of us may have probably knew most or not all of that information, but here are some 10 facts that you did not know about Martin Luther King Jr. So 1, did you know that King's birth name was Michael, not Martin? King was born Michael King Jr. on the 15th of January of 1929. And in 1934, however, his father, a pastor at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, traveled to Germany and became inspired by the Protestant Reformation leader Martin Luther. As a result, King Sr. changed his own name as well as that of his 5-year-old son. Wow, did you know that? King entered college at the age of 15. He was such a gifted student that he skipped grades 9 and 12 before enrolling in 1944 at Morehouse College, his father and maternal grandfather's alma mater. Although he was the son, grandson, and great-grandson of Baptist ministers, King did not intend to follow the family vacation until Morehouse president at the time, Benjamin E. Mays, a noted theologian, convinced him otherwise. King was ordained before graduating college with a degree in sociology. He actually received his doctorate in systematic theology after earning a divinity degree from Pennsylvania's Crozer Theological Seminary. He attended graduate school at Boston University, where he received his PhD in 1955. The title of his dissertation was A Comparison of the Conceptions of God in the Thinking of Paul Tillich and Henry Nelson Weeman. Number 4, did you know that King's I Have a Dream speech was not his first at the Lincoln Memorial? 6 years before his iconic oration at the March on Washington, he spoke in the shadow of the great emancipator during the prayer pilgrimage for freedom on May 17th, 1957. Before a crowd estimated at between 15 and 30,000, he delivered his first national address on the topic of voting rights. And his speech, in which he urged America to give us the ballot, he drew strong reviews and positioned him at the forefront of the civil rights leadership. Did you know that King was imprisoned nearly 30 times? Can you believe that? 30 times in prison. According to the King Center, he went to jail 29 times. He was arrested for acts of civil disobedience and on trumped up charges, such as when he was jailed in Montgomery, Alabama in 1956 for driving 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. Mm. Did you know that he narrowly escaped an assassination attempt a decade before his death? And on September 20th, 1958, he was in Harlem signing copies of his new book, Stride Toward Freedom, in a Blumstein's department store when he was approached by Izola Ware Curry. The woman asked if he was Martin Luther King Jr. After he said yes, Curry said, "I've been looking for you for 5 years," and she plunged a 7-inch letter opener into his chest. Can you believe that? The tip of the blade came to rest along his aorta, and King underwent hours of delicate emergency surgery. And surgeons later told King that just one sneeze could have punctured his aorta and killed him. From his hospital bed, where he stayed for weeks, he issued a statement affirming his nonviolent principles and said he felt no ill will toward his mentally ill attacker. Wow. Still forgave him. Still said no ill will, even though that happened. His last public speech actually foretold his death in some ways. He had come to Memphis in 1968 to support the strike of the city's Black garbage workers. And in his speech on the night before his assassination, he told an audience at the Mason Temple Church, "Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get there, will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." And that's what he had said. So that's, just so interesting what had happened not too soon later, right? Did you also know that members of King's family did not believe James Earl Ray acted alone? Ray, a career criminal, pled guilty to King's assassination, but later recanted. King's son Dexter met publicly with Ray in 1997 and argued for the case to be reopened. King's widow, Coretta, believed the mafia and local, state, and federal government agencies were deeply involved in the murder. She praised the result of a 1999 civil trial in which a Memphis jury decided the assassination was the result of a conspiracy and that Ray was set up to take the blame. A US Department of Justice investigation released in 2000 reported no evidence of a conspiracy. May never know. Did you know King's mother was also killed by a bullet? On June 30th of 74, as 69-year-old Alberta Williams King played the organ at a Sunday service inside the Ebenezer Baptist Church, Marcus Wayne Chenault Jr. rose from the front pew, drew 2 pistols, and began to fire shots. One of the bullets struck and killed King, who died steps from where her son had preached nonviolence. The deranged gunman said that Christians were his enemy and that although he had received divine instructions to kill King's father, who was in the congregation, he killed King's mother instead because she was closer. The shooting also left a church deacon dead. Chenault received a death penalty sentence that was later changed to life imprisonment, in part due to the King family's opposition to capital punishment. Wow. So the family's wishes or beliefs saved the man. Last but not least, did you know that George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Cesar Chavez are the only other Americans that have had their birthdays observed as a national holiday? And what we'll learn today, in 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill that created a federal holiday to honor King. The holiday, first commemorated in 1986, is celebrated on the third Monday in January, close to King's January 15th birthday. And that happens to be directly on his birthday this year. So January 15th is the third Monday of this in this month of 2024, and it's also his birthday. So quite interesting, right? So those are some facts that you may have not known about Dr. King, and I hope those are interesting. Next up, again, just some more history on the origins of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And one before we do that, I found this quote that he had said. Well, actually, this is a part of his classic collections of 16 sermons that were actually preached and compiled by Dr. King. And from this quote, it was from A Gift of Love. And he said that we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. So it's quite a poignant quote. So would anyone would like to raise their hand and just share what they think of the quote, how it made them feel? I'll take one or two hands. Anyone like to share what this quote, how it makes them feel and what it means to them? Okay, thank you, Ms. Doris. And then we'll have Ms. Diane.
I like to share that because you don't deal with evil. Some people just mean and do things, but you gotta learn how to forgive and bypass that. And I had experience with my niece that did some disrespectful things to me, but I just kept praying to God to forgive her. So now she started calling me again, but she never asked me to forgive her, but I asked God to let me forgive her.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't hate people. All of us go through different things in life and make a mistake sometimes and doing the wrong things. But you don't take it personally. You gotta learn you gotta learn how to forgive that person, pray for them, and all that. That's all I got to say, Alice.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Doris. And I agree with what you have to say. And we never know the 100% story of kind of what's going on with others. So at the end of the day, it's just easier on our soul to, I guess, forgive and not forget, but to forgive and move on, right? So thank you for sharing that, Ms. Doris. Next up is Diane. Hi, Diane. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Alex. How you doing?
I'm well. Hope you're well today.
All right. In this quote, I think all of us have, like he said, some worst in us and some good in us. And by that, I think we have 2 to 3 personalities. Because we act one way with our family. We act like different on how iPad, we all very jovial and nice to each other. And then we act one way with our parents. Sisters and brothers and mothers and fathers. And I know that I have 2 personalities because when I get evil, that's a personality. And that personality insists. Did you hear what I said? I said insist that I be real nasty. Because at that time I can't control what I'm saying. But when my personality clicks back to the Diane that's friendly, it's different. The only person I can really explain it to is my psychiatrist, but I know what I'm saying.
Oh, that's no, it's thank you so much for sharing, Diane. What I can say and what I think of when you say that is each person is not one dimensional. As humans, we are so complex in our feelings and our emotions and our actions and our personalities and our intentions. So, just, we just kind of have to, set aside the bad and kind of focus on the positive. And if we ever get to that space, then we can, use our techniques like our breathing and, just to calm ourselves down to, a more nonviolent thought, right? So thank you so much for sharing that, Diane. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And then last, if you want to share, I just want to make sure we get through the session. Ms. Thompson, would you like to share something?
Yes.
How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on. What do you think of this quote?
There's one person in my life that I wasn't able to forgive. And I just thought about it when you read this poem. I was in the 4th grade and she failed me. She was mean to me. And I never, ever in my heart failed to forgive her. And I want to, but I can't. That's all I have to share.
I understand how you feel, Miss Brenda, in many ways. There's sometimes we go through some pretty difficult experiences, and it can be really hard for us to forgive and have that thought, because they may have done just something so terrible, and it just made us feel so bad that that other personality that Diane just talked about just would come out. But even in those circumstances, you'll never forget, and that's understandable. But when you do forgive, it just gives us some kind of peace and some kind of way to move on, so that way we can then just do better and to keep going, Miss Brenda. So I definitely understand how you feel, and I hope this quote was meaningful for you. So thank you for sharing, Ms. Thompson. I appreciate that. Thank you. Just take 5 if you need to, Ms. Brenda. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And I see we do have many hands up, and trust me, we will have our discussion at the end. I really appreciate all of your participation, and you wanted to say something. This is a very poignant and important quote, especially nowadays. So, would evoke some kind of feelings and emotions, and it certainly does for myself. So, we're just know that we're all here for each other, okay? So just keep that in mind. So just moving on, just a brief history of MLK Day. So after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Rosemary Ryan of Kansas City, Kansas, wrote a letter to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or SCLC, expressing her desire for King's January 15th birthday to be made a national holiday. And you can actually see the letter that she wrote on the right-hand side. So, a blast from the past, right? And she stated, "I want Dr. King's birthday declared a national holiday to remind the whole world over for centuries to come that Martin Luther King Jr. suffered and sacrificed his life so that all mankind may one day live together in brotherhood." And that's, quite a powerful statement, right? And for someone to believe in somebody so much, that she would, do that, And this is, again, the actual letter of that. So it's, blast from the past. Me, I love cursive writing. I can write in cursive. I wish I could, but it's just so interesting to look at a piece of history, right? Um, Hundreds of other letters and postcards sent to the SCLC echoed Ryan's message, along with thousands of petitions gathered from around the country. By April 1971, the SCLC had gathered more than 3 million signatures of support. These petitions became part of the records of the House Judiciary Committee. At the time, Congress took no action on the holiday. It wasn't until November 1983, like 12 years after these signatures were taken, 12 years, can't believe it, that legislation became law designating the third Monday of every January as the Martin Luther King National Holiday. And if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, who is sitting down? That's again Ronald Reagan, right? And that was the signing ceremony for MLK Day. So again, another blast from the past. So again, just a brief history on how MLK Day came to be. This next video, again, goes a little bit more in depth on the origins of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And again, I found this video quite interesting, and I hope you do as well.
Why wasn't Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebrated in all 50 states until the year 2000? And what do the NFL, taxes, and Stevie Wonder have to do with it? Most of us are familiar with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for his role in advancing civil rights and his participation in landmark protests, such as the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the Montgomery bus boycotts, the Selma to Montgomery marches, as well as his involvement in civil disobedience and nonviolence. But even though the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. seems relatively common today, his role in U.S. history was contentious during his years of activism. He was closely monitored by the FBI during his lifetime for his protests. He was arrested approximately 29 times on trumped-up charges for his attempts to change unjust and biased laws. He spoke openly in favor of labor rights and against U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War and racial terror, causing many to label him as anti-American or a communist sympathizer. In 2014, Professor Beverly Gage, a historian at Yale, unearthed a 1964 letter from a supposed detractor who accused King of infidelity and insinuated that he should commit suicide. The letter was later discovered to be sent from the FBI, which was then led by J. Edgar Hoover, a notorious King detractor. Although the discovery of the letter's authorship came over a decade later from the Senate's Church Committee on Intelligence Overreach. And when he was awarded an honorary doctorate from Yale in 1964, certain parents, students, and members of the public expressed outrage at the university's decision. But the tricky part of this conversation is that, yes, Dr. King in some cases broke the law, but those same laws were later overturned when they were discovered to be unjust. So although his legacy is currently celebrated, that was not always the case, making the passage of his federal holiday controversial when it was first proposed. But the pathway to MLK Day becoming a holiday was a rocky one, and here at the Origin of Everything, we thought we'd take this occasion to note some of the important landmarks on the path to how the federal holiday came into existence. Because although it might seem like something of a given to many of us today, the holiday wasn't recognized and celebrated in all 50 states until 2000. That's right, MLK Day was fully recognized nationwide for the first time the month after the world calmed down from Y2K madness. But before we get to what halted the holiday spread, we should first ask ourselves, what were the earliest iterations of Martin Luther King Jr. Day and when did it begin? Beginning in March 1968, MLK was in Memphis in support of the black sanitation workers who had been on strike. On April 3rd, he delivered his final speech, "I've been to the mountaintop," at the Mason Temple. On April 4th, he was shot and killed by James Earl Ray while standing on the second floor balcony outside of his room at the Lorraine Motel. 4 days after his assassination, Congressman John Conyers of Michigan, who recently resigned, introduced the first legislation to make Martin Luther King Jr. Day a federal holiday. By June 26th of that same year, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Center was founded in Atlanta, Georgia. And on January 15th, 1969, the King Center began to commemorate his birthday with an ecumenical service, which gained attention as a model for other observers observances of his birthday nationwide. But these were privately held ceremonies and not a federal holiday. So that brings us to our next question. If Martin Luther King Jr. Day began as a series of private observances, then when did it become a federal holiday? And why was there so much resistance to its passage? Well, it seems like there were two camps that formed in resistance to recognizing MLK Day as a national holiday. The first was concerned with King's history as a political objector and activist, while the other was concerned with the cost associated with creating a federal holiday. In 1971, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference collected 3 million signatures in support of making King Day a holiday, and these signatures were presented to Congress, but Congress didn't progress any action to make it a federal holiday that year. Then in 1973, Illinois became the first state to pass legislation making MLK a state holiday, followed by Massachusetts and Connecticut in 1974. And in 1975, the New Jersey State Supreme Court ruled that the state must provide a paid holiday for state employees on MLK Day because of its labor contracts with the New Jersey State Employees Association. From 1975 to 1983, pressure from the public, congressional hearings from King's widow, Coretta Scott King, and calls to action from the National Council of Churches all influenced the conversation around whether Martin Luther King Jr. Day should become a federal holiday in all 50 states. Recording artist Stevie Wonder even got in on the act with the release of his 1980 song Happy Birthday, celebrating the birthday of Dr. King and urging for the holiday to be passed.
I didn't know that.
By 1983, the continued pressure had paid off, and both the Senate and Congress were strongly in favor of the passage of MLK Day, but even with the majority of leaders supporting the passage of the federal holiday, there still remained some holdouts. Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina came out against the bill, calling King a supporter of radical political views and action-oriented Marxism, before temporarily blocking the Senate action on the House-approved bill in 1983. And although the bill was criticized by Helms, it wasn't universally unpopular or popular along specific party lines, with senators and congressmen and women supporting the bill on either side of the aisle. Then in 1983, the King Holiday Bill was passed, which called for MLK Day to be celebrated on the third Monday in January. The bill received bipartisan support and was sponsored by Democratic Rep. Katie Hull from Indiana and Republican Rep. Jack Kemp of New York. Later that same year, the bill was passed in the Senate, sponsored by Senator Ted Kennedy, before being signed by President Reagan on November 3rd. The holiday was scheduled to begin in 1986. So the first MLK Day was celebrated as a federal holiday in 1986, but it wasn't recognized in all 50 states until 2000. So that brings us to our final question. What happened to the holiday in the 14 years between the scheduled beginning of Martin Luther King Jr. Day and its first nationwide recognition in 2000? Well, in 1984, the King Holiday Commission was formed and chaired by Coretta Scott King, and the holiday was first celebrated in 1986 as planned. But remember when I noted that there were some opposed to passing a federal holiday in honor of King because of the potential cost to taxpayers? Well, with the passage of a federal holiday came the question of paid leave for unionized employees and federal employees. In 1990, only 18% of the 317 corporate employers surveyed by the Bureau of National Affairs provided a paid King holiday. But labor unions were one of the strongest supporters of making MLK Day a federal holiday, especially in light of his support of workers' rights and labor unions. And in fact, waves of strikes or workers refusing to work on King's birthday in the 1970s helped to garner support for making MLK Day a federal holiday. Also, the creation of a federal holiday isn't exactly cheap, and it's different from a national holiday. The 10 recognized federal holidays celebrated today are not technically national holidays. A national holiday would mean that Congress and/or the president has enforced the recognition of a holiday in all 50 states, whereas a federal holiday is a holiday that applies only to federal employees and to the District of Columbia. And with the creation of a holiday that gives time off to federal employees, as well as the potential for paid time off to employees in the private sector, there is an associated cost. A 1999 congressional report notes, supporters of the bill argued that a federal holiday would provide genuine and deserved recognition to Dr. King and the civil rights movement that he led. Opponents maintained that the nation did not need a 10th federal holiday and cited its expense to the taxpayers, an estimated $220 to $240 million a year in lost productivity in the federal workforce, and more than $4 billion in the private sector. But even though they were concerned about the cost of providing a holiday, there were instances in which employers and states actually lost money for not recognizing MLK Day. Labor unions are one of the strongest supporters of the making of MLK Day a federal holiday, especially in light of his support of workers' rights rights and labor unions. And in fact, waves of strikes or workers refusing to work on King's birthday in the 1970s helped to garner support for making MLK Day a federal holiday. In 1991, the National Football League voted to remove the 1993 Super Bowl from Arizona over the state's refusal to recognize MLK Day, deciding to host it in Pasadena instead. By 1992, Arizona passed a referendum establishing a statewide King holiday, which was first celebrated in 1993. But even with these counter-arguments presented against the passage of MLK Day, there was still steadily growing support for the new holiday. Then Governor Gene Shaheen of New Hampshire signed MLK Day into law in 1999, making the year 2000 the first year that the holiday was celebrated in every state nationwide. So, how does it all add up? Well, it seems the path to MLK Day becoming a federal holiday was a rocky one, and although pushback surrounding King's recognition after his assassination was influenced by his legacy as a civil rights leader, another component of the story was surrounding labor organizing alongside individual states and employers being reluctant to offer a paid holiday for employees. But it was the advocacy of unions, the activism of the general public, and the sustained organizing of groups such as the King Center that finally saw this federal holiday recognized across the US. So, what do you think? Have any other resources and insights to share on the origins of this federal holiday? Drop them below. Have a safe long weekend, and we'll see you next week. Hey guys, so we had some great feedback from our holiday.
Wow. So all the information about how it took until 2000 for MLK Day to be not recognized in all 50 states. Wow. So that's a lot to think about, but a lot of great and interesting information, I hope. So next I will be talking about Martin Luther King Day and the seniors' impact on that day. All right. Why is MLK Day important for seniors? So, it's often particularly important to seniors, and, many people wonder what role, they can play and what they can do to pay tribute to Dr. King. So most or many seniors may remember well the fight for equality and justice that occurred during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, led by MLK, of course. Despite there being dedicated curriculum in schools to teach children about the civil rights movement, it's only the older generation of American citizens who can actually remember what it actually felt like to live during that time of racial segregation. And you know what that means? That means seniors, you all have an important role to play in the modern day fight for equality and educating and influencing, the younger generations, like today's generation, to let them know, what had to be done in order for us to have, what we have today versus what we didn't, during these times. Remember that MLK Day is a day to reflect on the progress that's already been made and the progress that is currently in the works. I think it's vital to remember Dr. King's legacy, especially on MLK Day, and continue his fight, which every single American has a role to play in, right? And just saw this little gift right here. I thought was, pointing in. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So, just think at the end of the day, based on what MLK, what he said, we're all at the end of the day hoping towards peace and equality and unity with each other. So yeah. Because MLK Day is a holiday meant to honor King's fight for racial equality, did you know it's actually the only federal holiday designated as a national day of service? Remember that the day is intended to highlight not only how far we've come, but how far we still have to go to achieve racial equality. Some simple ways you can celebrate MLK Day include, of course, it is a national day of service, so you can spend the day volunteering. Many ways to volunteer in DC. The mayor has its own section for volunteerism, and just Google is just a click away, and you can search for different volunteer opportunities that are near you. Um, you can also read a book. You don't have to commit to finish a book in one day, right? But just this day, just try to choose a book about King's life and aim to finish them in the next few weeks. Some books can include written by him himself, such as Stride Toward Freedom, the Montgomery Story, which is the first book that he wrote, or you can pick up an autobiography or a collection of his sermons. If you go on Google and you search the King Center, which we mentioned before, it has a full list of books written by and about King that'll get you started. So if you literally Google the King Center list of books, you'll be able to find that information. You can listen to his speeches because Dr. King was the man knew how to say a speech or how to present a speech. It's just always so poignant. And you can of course look up on, I would say YouTube is the best bet. You can look up his "I Have a Dream" speech, but there are also other speeches that you can listen. So if you can either Google it or go on YouTube and search for Dr. King, speeches by Dr. King, you can then listen to them with others and learn from them. You can watch a documentary. So, nowadays we have a lot of streaming services and of course YouTube as well. So I would search for a video or a documentary more about Dr. King. So that's how I found these videos for you all. So just try to do the same thing. You can Google or go on YouTube and find some videos and documentaries about any aspect of Dr. King's life. Last but not least, and what I think is one of the most important things you can do is to teach your kids or grandkids or, anyone about Dr. King, right? Anybody, because we're all, trying to fight for better, equality and better days, right? As you spend the day learning more about his legacy, be sure to include your, kids, grandkids, family members, friends. It's never too early to teach one specific kids about racial equality, of course. And this holiday is the perfect time to introduce the conversation if that ever happens. So again, some easy, I would literally write Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. kids books or regular books or speeches or anything. You can go on Google and really look up a lot of information just to learn more about him and his struggles and how he still has an impact on us to this day. So here are just some simple ways you can spend and celebrate MLK Day. And again, I found this gift right here. He said, "We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." So just based on this quote, Dr. King was very, very dedicated to his mission. And, despite the challenges, he was able to make a real impact on the world. So, we can all yearn to, be as, in his character as we can, or to make our world a better place. So here are some simple ways to celebrate MLK Day. One thing that I added is I just looked at how you can celebrate in DC, because we are in DC, and if you look at this picture, you already know where it's at, date, all that good stuff. And I'm also going to put in the chat this link to this NBC Washington article. So let me go ahead and find that and put it in the chat so you all can access it as well if you would like. So I'm doing that in 1 second. Oops, my bad. Give me 1 second, everyone, and let me go ahead and post this link. Yep, so again, it's the NBC Washington article. And here's the video we'll play just from the article, just so we can hear it.
It was the first time I've seen a
Let me make it full screen. Let me try again.
If we weren't proud of the craftsmanship and level of...
Sorry about the advertisement. While the advertisement plays, there are different things that you can do in DC. So the theme for MLK Day 2024 is shifting the cultural climate through the study and practice of Kingian nonviolence. It's about using nonviolent solutions to address injustice and violence around the world.
You know, I was so young at the time. It was the first time I've seen a crowd like that, you know, and it was the first time I've seen white people mixed with black people,
a photographer,
and they didn't get lynched. I mean, you never saw white people marching with black people for anything, you know, let alone jobs and equality. No more segregation and stuff like that. I mean, and the air was electric with that.
The March on Washington is not the climax of our struggle, but a new beginning, not only for the Negro, but for all Americans who thirst for freedom and a better life.
Yeah, in the National Museum.
The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom had many purposes. One, it wanted to recognize the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. But it also wanted to address issues in 1963 that African Americans were still dealing with regarding segregation, particularly with public accommodations, segregation in housing, education, as well as job training and
these
employment.
Images are so
and so
powerful.
it sought to tackle the issues of civil rights across the board. So there were a number of organizers involved in the March on Washington. Of course, we've heard about one of the main architects, Bayard Rustin, working with someone like A. Philip Randolph. But there were a number of organizations as well.
Yes, I was a part of the planning of the march.
Wow.
I was a student
that's
at Yale Law School. It was clear that there was going to be a march. I then went to New York to help plan for the March on Washington and was a part of all the activity, particularly getting buses and cars to come to the march. We weren't sure it would be successful, but I was able to work from New York, and indeed I was the last person to leave the headquarters in Harlem because someone had to stay there to get buses and to tell people where to go. We weren't sure it was going to be successful, but it was a bigger success than we could have imagined.
And my mother had a camera, and she wasn't taking pictures, so I picked up the camera.
This is the Phillips collection in DC.
I'm gonna take these pictures today.
I actually used to.
So I
worked
started
here
taking
for the
pictures.
summer. So there was a lot of fun.
You know, I wanted to get the atmosphere, how big the crowd was, and how where put it in a place. I think it was the Lincoln Monument and the reflection pool in front. So there were people all around, and it was like a carpet full of people. You know, if you looked out from the monument, you could see it just looked like a rug of people. Every space was filled, and it was awe-inspiring to see all these people for a common cause. And the common cause were black folks. So the freedom of black folks.
Well, the march had a number of long-term effects. And even short-term effects. So we could talk about the Civil Rights Act, of course, and then the Voting Rights Act that are a result of the march. And then later on, we're looking at other issues related to employment and housing, say the Fair Housing Act, even in 1968.
I don't think there has ever been a demonstration which reaped such wonderful legislation.
And so when we saw what we were able to achieve with the March on Washington, then that raised the level of, and the thinking of the kinds of mobilization that could happen nationally for all kinds of movements. You think about movements that came later with the Vietnam War, for example, Stonewall, and then how that would turn into a national movement. The Poor People's Campaign in 1968, and even looking at the way we organize and mobilize and think about mobilization on a national and even global level today with Black Lives Matter. So I think the March on Washington was an important model that told us what was possible and what the impact could be of those possibilities.
It certainly was part of my inspiration for running for Congress. At the time, I was a leader of the Home Rule movement in the District of Columbia, but it certainly inspired me when this seat became vacant to run for Congress, and that's where I've been ever since.
Oftentimes, you know, the national level can be a long and tiring process where people don't see change in the way they want to or in the speed that they want to. What I always tell people is always focus on the local issues. How can you actually focus in on your local city council? What are the things that are being discussed at your school board meetings? Even though, again, that progress has been made from our ancestors and our elders, the torch or the baton has been passed on to us to continue that fight. So we always say that, like, you know, like it's not just a moment, it's a movement.
Wow, I just wanted to show that video to you all for those, you know, those pictures. Again, keep saying a bit very poignant, and it's really important to look at our history and where we came from and be appreciative and thankful and grateful of the things we're able to do now, you know, in 2024. So, so yes, this year, the holiday falls on Dr. King's actual birthday. If he was alive today, Dr. King would be 95 years old. Can you believe it? So yeah, in this article, again, I also put in the chat. Of course, DC has a DC Martin Luther King Jr. holiday parade. And if you look at this link right here, it says find more details in the website and below. If I tap on that link, it's taking a second, but it'll take you to mlkholidaydc.org, and you can see everything that's going on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So look, Peace Walk. Peace Walk to 9 a.m. Peace Rally, 9:45 a.m. Assembly at Shepherd Parkway. And you can look at some history right here. Parade starts at 11 to 2 on, it starts at the Rise Demonstration Center on 2730 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Southeast, 232. You can register at the Eventbrite link if you would like, right here. There will be a prayer breakfast on January 13th, 2024, 9 to 12, at Matthews Memorial Baptist Church, which is at 2616 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast, 220. So that's this coming Saturday. There is a wellness fair on the 15th from 11 to 1 on 2006 MLK Avenue Southeast. You can volunteer. There is a community cleanup project from noon to 2. And you can email them here or call the number on the screen. And there's even an essay contest. So if you know any young ones or teenagers, these for grades elementary to high school, there's an essay contest where there are cash prizes for the submission. So it actually ended 2023. So I'm glad I'm looking at that now. But for next year, you can let them know. So I just noticed it said 2023, but so this coming December, just look for them having this contest if you know anyone that this would be useful for. But yes, this is mlkholidaydc.org, and that is the website from the article. So if I go back here, let's see. The I Have a Dream speech is on display at the National Museum of African American History. On Monday, the museum will host the People's Holiday, The Many Dreams of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from 11 to 4. students from Duke Ellington will perform original work throughout the day. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, every Saturday and Sunday at 2, you can meet a ranger at the memorial to learn about its history and art. There is a poetry slam hosted by busboys and poets at the Anacostia location. And it's free to participate or $5 to attend. Germantown, Maryland, the Black Rock Center for the Arts is hosting its Say Loud MLK event, a full day of performances, films, art exhibits, and a record fair. We just talked about the Peace Walk and Parade. Wow, there's a MLK tribute at the Kennedy Center, and they'll have Jordan Sparks, Nolan Williams Jr., and Cecily McLaurin-Salvant. That's great. It starts at 4:30. Great. And there's many different days of service. So you can, with AmeriCorps, you can look at any volunteer opportunities, or the Anacostia Riverkeeper, National Capital Parks, etc. And Martin Luther King Jr. Day is one of the days that the National Park Service waives entrance fees at all locations. So if you would like to visit Great Falls Park, Shenandoah National Park, or Harpers Ferry National Historical Park, there is apparently free entry to them. So, so here are some things that you can do in DC if you would like on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I hope you all enjoyed. Before we get into our discussion, again, just 1 or 2 hands, just an activity after listening to everything that we said today. If you had the opportunity to meet Martin Luther King, what would we would ask him, or what would you tell him? I would thank him, or I would show him. So if you could raise your hand and finish any of these in your thoughts, that it's a interesting thing to think about. So if you met Martin Luther King Jr., I would ask him, I would tell him, I would thank him, or I would show him. And I would love to hear your responses. So any takers, please raise your hand in Zoom. And if I met Martin Luther King, I would ask, tell, thank, or show him blank. Thank you, Mr. Mickens, for raising your hand. And then we'll hear from Ms. Thelma. You gotta unmute, Mr. Mickens.
Yes, how you doing, Alex?
I'm good. How are you doing today? Hope you enjoyed.
I believe if I met Martin Luther King, I would like to thank him for being the type of man that he was, to try to bring equality to everyone. To try to break up the racism that started way back in the 50s or before then, and just try to get everyone together as one. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ronald. If I had a book of what I would say, that would definitely be its own page. So thank you so much. Next up is Miss Thelma. How are you?
Oh, fine. Well, I almost had a chance to meet him in the 60s. But if I could meet him today, I still would thank him for the service and this courage that he gave me for having early childhood. When my child was age 3 years old, able to attend school. And that gave me the opportunity as a young mother to take and go back to work, early in life. And then, he did the little that he did, because if he had lived, he would have did a whole lot.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
the
would
little
have.
that he did, afterwards, I got the joy that I actually walked up Martin Luther King Avenue into Congress Heights, which was all white, walked to a white neighborhood without getting something thrown at me or something nasty said to me. And I walked Alabama Avenue all the way around to about Caesar Road, about down Good Oak Road and back up to Bird Farm. When, I found out how powerful and I thought it was his word. Well, it was his words. Because if you listen to him, you stood still and just cried. But it was more than this word. It was anticipation of people that was with him that got the laws to be passed. That's why we got our children involved, junkyard band and boys are all of them involved in that. And we actually went around and we did petitions. Come on, let's get, let's legalize, let's get this holiday legalized, show them that we actually care as Black people in this community of Bird Farm, Park, Chester, Congress Heights. And we did it. We had so many petitions, they said we would forge them people's signatures. But we didn't. We and our children, we walked from door to door. We got this, we marched in 83 with Reverend Jesse Jackson for job. Our slogan was, we need a job so we can EAT. And the children still remember that right now today. So it was a lot of things we did, and continue doing after he's gone, because it's still something. That's why at my church, Matthews, we hold a prayer breakfast every year, because we gather the young people in there. We get the young adults. We get more young adults in that. Is because they're not, this is something I can't get to it, but they're not afraid to come into Matthews, because they know if they come into Matthew high on drugs, they're going to sit and listen. They don't have to worry about nobody putting them out. So they familiarize themselves with the area that they want to come in. And this how we can get them and keep them more involved. And that's what I have to say right now, is that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ms. Thelma, and your words were very impactful. And yes, you were there. So, that's why it's important for seniors to really take, precedence in, your words, because, you all experienced what we've been talking about, and because you lived through that time. So, your words are very important and very powerful. And thank you so much for sharing, Ms. Thelma. Appreciate it. And don't forget to lower your hand. Last up, and then we'll go on to our other questions, is Anne. And then Anne, if I could go to the next slide, and you could also answer one. I'd appreciate that too. How are you, Anne?
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed.
I did, and I just wanted to say how dynamic he was. What a dynamic speaker. I heard him several times, but I think the most dynamic thing that happened to me was I got a hug from him on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And he told me that he said, always be the future. And I would just thank him for that, for giving me the courage to keep on doing what my family was doing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak to you today.
Oh, wow. I appreciate that, Anne. And wow, you actually got the opportunity to speak with him. That's, something that I would just yell to the world and share, because that's such a precious moment. And thank you so much for sharing that. You all could also put your responses in the chat too. I see Ms. Delaney also put, she said, I would say thank you so much. And then Miss Juliet, I see you sent me a direct message, but I think you meant to say everyone. She said, I would tell how much I think and appreciate his unselfish act of fighting for all of us, and people all over the world appreciate his nonviolent act. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Miss Juliet. And I agree. And everything that everyone said regarding this activity, I appreciate your words very much. So last up is, of course, our discussion, what MLK Day means to you. So I hope you enjoy that activity, and please feel free to continue to respond to the activity. But I have some questions for you all as well. So any feedback or how you felt about today's session as well, but here are some questions to think about. And if you could answer, I'd appreciate by raising your hand. Throughout the civil rights movement, people gave their lives so everyone could have the right to vote. Why is it important to protect this right? How do you think differently today about MLK Day after hearing this information? In what ways will you celebrate Dr. King's legacy this weekend? Maybe with some of the tips that I went over or your own. Last but not least, what is one new fact that you learned today? Because there was a lot of information and even stuff that I was not aware of, I learned. So any combination or one or all of them, I'd love for you all to answer and share your thoughts. But it was such a pleasure to present this information for you all today. And it was a lot of fun and informative. So again, please raise your hand. I'd love if you could answer one or more of these questions. And of course, at the end, we'll be having our poll. So make sure you stay on for the poll. First up is Teresa. I can, after you answer, I can definitely go to that. I can go to that slide for you. But how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for the presentation. The thing that I learned today was about him, his dad changing the name. I had never heard about that. Yeah. And what am I going to do to celebrate? I'm going to talk to some young people about Martin Luther King. And specific, he's a broad subject. I'm going to narrow it down to the March on Washington. And I can narrow it down. That's a good place for me to narrow it down too, because I was there. I was one of the marshals. But the way I'm going to pull them in is that someone alluded to it earlier, spoke about it earlier. At the march, you had to have courage to go there, because anything could have happened. You could have gotten lynched. The marshals could have shot you down. Anything. But so we went knowing that. So the young people in the street today, they go in the streets, I guess, knowing they can get killed, but realize that we went knowing we could get killed. It was for a cause. So challenge them. If you must go out there, I hope you choose not to, but go to do something for a cause. And if you go to do something for a cause, it'll broaden you and broaden the people that are around you. That's the angle in which I'm going to speak with them about. If I speak to them from the angle that we speak from, 70, 80, 90 years old, it might not even reach them. They might not even want to hear the conversation. But if I talk about courage and what we were up against and what you're up against, and ours was for cause and yours is not, that's the way I'm going to pull them in, and I'm hoping I'm successful. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to say that. Hey, gang. James Gang, how you doing? And have fun on Martin Luther King's Day, okay?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing, Teresa. And here's this quote that you had said. So can you take a second to take the screenshot if you can do that, if you would like? Again, the home button and the power button. If you hit both at the same time, you can take a screenshot. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But if you don't get it, just send me a chat and I can send it to you. But thank you so much for sharing that, Teresa, and your words and what you would say. I love the direction that you took. And what I can say is nowadays, you have to be creative in some ways to get your message across. in some ways these days, but I think your reasoning was stellar, and I hope it's impactful for those folks. And I hope you can use some of what you learned today in that. And thank you so much for sharing. Ms. Yvonne, thank you for that. Thank you for the email. I actually was able to take a look at it. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Wilmatine, for the chat as well. I appreciate that. Hi, Ms. Juliet. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Alex, I sent you something in the chat. There is a church. Yes. Can you hear me? There is a church. There is a church on 14th Street near Vermont Place. And it started out with the Martin Luther. So earlier you said he changed his name, but that church is a historical part of DC, leading back to the early days of the church when Martin Luther broke away. Now, Martin Luther King father, as a minister, he was concerned about Martin Luther, and he actually went overseas to meet him. And when he came back to America, he changed his son's name to Martin. And that's how Martin Luther King, that's his name. It was not always Martin.
Yes.
He was a namesake, more or less, of the Martin Luther that broke away from the church years ago. And it's a place that they can visit in DC. It's a historical place. Right there, by Thomas Circuit in that area.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Miss Juliet. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation.
I sure did. Thank you very much. You did an awesome job.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You keep getting better each time.
Oh, well, that's my main goal every day. So I appreciate
Alex, can I say something to Miss Brenda? On her, I can feel her pain. And Miss Brenda, if you could just pray every day and just ask the Lord to help you to forgive. Do it as often as you remember, because we have all been hurt, and the people who hurt us in life, they were hurt by somebody else. And I think that, you give a person what is in your heart. If you have kindness in your heart, that's what you will give to other people. So for your own peace of mind, just ask for forgiveness for you. And because I tell people hurt me, but I want to see God. So I cannot present myself to him with anger. So I have to forgive because it's about you. I feel her pain, and she have to ask the Lord to help her to forgive that person. And that's what I have to say. But it can be done, Miss Brenda, and you will come out victorious.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for that encouragement, Miss Juliet. And I hope that was helpful for you, Miss Brenda. I know you're still on, and I agree with 100% that what you just said. And thank you for being so kind. And, I really appreciate all of your words and participation, Miss Juliet. And you have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Alice, for your chat. She said that Andrew Young will be a speaker at the church service at Washington National Cathedral on Sunday, January 14th at 11. Thank you so much, Miss Hayes, for the information. And I appreciate that. Cassandra, I'll be sure to do that, okay? I'll be sure to do that. Let me just write that down. Thank you. Anybody else would like to share your response to these questions, your reactions, how you felt about today? Any other questions? Please raise your hand, or if you could answer one of these questions for me, that would be a lot of fun, and I'd really appreciate that. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for attending today's session. I'm going to go ahead and start our polls, so that way you can fill out how you felt about today, and then you're free to go for the rest of the day. So thank you so much for coming on. Tomorrow we have our dance session on the iPad keyboard at 10 a.m. We'll be taking a trip to Turkey at 12 p.m. with Lou, and then at 1:30 we'll be covering module 3, learning how to use email on your iPad. Mr. Harold, did you want to say something?
Oh, as you're wrapping up, it's okay now. We'll do it the next time.
No, we have some time. I saw your hand as soon as I said it. Would you like to share?
Oh, I was just trying to fill some time. I guess I'll go ahead then. I'll leave the first question about the right to vote. And as a couple of you have said before, how you approach younger people about voting, civic participation, etc. And I know we often say people died for the right to vote, etc., which is very, very true. And people still die for it. But voting is a fundamental right that every American should exercise, because you really can't complain when you do not participate. You don't have to go to the meetings, the ANC, the etc. You don't have to go to any of those meetings, but you should always vote, and we should always try to encourage others to vote. Old, young, in between, just vote. You don't have to do anything else. Just vote. Whatever party, I'm not concerned with that. I just want you to vote. That's all I want to say, Alex, how important voting is.
Oh, yes. I remembered our Juneteenth presentation or event we had last year. It was a major part, and in sharing your beliefs and voting is a fundamental right. So we should all take advantage of it to the best of our ability. So thank you for sharing that, Mr. Harold. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. So make sure you fill it out. And then while you fill out the poll, I'll hear from Miss Shirley and then Miss Doris. So I'm going to unmute you, Miss Shirley, and then I'm going to go ahead and start our poll. So please go ahead and fill it out while we hear from others. But again, thank you so much for today. So hi, Miss Shirley, how are you?
Yeah, hey Alex, how you doing? Yes,
good.
I just want to thank you. This was a beautiful presentation that you did today on Martin Luther King. And I just, today the question that I had was this was the first time that I realized that they gathered 300 million signature in 1974 for Martin Luther King to for him to pass they have this holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I didn't know that J. Edgar Hoover was the one that wrote that letter, about him too. And that was a couple of new facts that I learned today. And I say this was a beautiful presentation. And I also say my oldest son lived down in Georgia, and I've been down to the Martin Luther King Center several times down there.
Yes.
To the center in the house that he had was raised up in, and then they have a new center across the street from the Martin Luther King Center where him and his wife tombs are in state.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that, especially about you visiting that center. I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, but I wasn't able to, really, experience the full, because I was just a little kid at that point. But, when I do visit that, that area is one place that I would love to visit after learning about it for this presentation. So,
yeah. Yes,
thank you.
Because my daughter-in-law is from Dublin, Georgia, though. But but a lot of times when we go down there, my son would just take us. That we would go down on to the Martin Luther King Center and just walk around and see everything down there, and it's nice. It's beautiful.
Oh wow! Thank you so much. I felt like I was there, Miss Shirley.
Okay.
Thank you for the comments and feedback. It's
okay.
I really appreciate that. You have a good day.
Okay, you too. And thank you for the presentation. It was beautiful. Very informative.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Ms. Doris.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Ms. Doris. How are you?
Thank you for educating me on so much today. I learned a lot. But, I think these young people, a lot of them don't understand how important it is to vote and everything. And that's why we probably don't get a percentage of them voting. Somebody need to educate them on how important it is. And I think they will get better results. I don't know how you're supposed to do it, but I think that's the real reason why they don't vote, because they don't know how important it is.
Right, and if you what did we talk about before? Did someone say if you know better, then do better? But if you don't know, then it's not your fault that you don't know. But when you do know, or when you learn something, then you can since you know it, you can have a better outcome in whatever you're doing. So
and then you would know how important it is to do that.
So just like that Miss Teresa just said, she would just talk with young folks. That's all it's important. Just once you put it in someone's brain, like once you just view something or watch a video or hear something that was different and made you think, it really does change your psyche and your mindset. And, you know, your words are powerful. So you may not realize the impact you may have on somebody just by sharing just some information with them, right?
Yeah, thank you for listening to me.
Oh, no problem, Ms. Doris. Thank you for coming on, and I hope you enjoyed today.
I enjoyed a whole lot today. I learned a lot today.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Just keep coming on, and thank you so much for attending today, Ms. Doris.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
Now let me check out the poll. The poll, let me see. Oh, well, thank you. More than 3/4 of you all had filled it out. Thank you so much for filling it out. If you have not filled it out, please make sure that you do. If you do not see the poll on your screen for whatever reason, you can tap on more and then hit polls and quizzes. So we'll have just a few more minutes left. In those minutes, I have Miss Jennifer Solomon. You can hit unmute. Unmute yourself. Would you like to answer one of these questions? Miss Jennifer, you got to hit unmute in the middle.
Yes, I went to his home where he was raised. I also was able to visit the new church that you know, and also the old church, and I was able to see where him and his wife is laid to rest. And also the firehouse that was close to his you know, his home, his old home. It was a beautiful thing to go in. You know, the home that he grew up in, and you couldn't touch the stuff, but to me it filled your heart.
It would fill mine as well, just to be in somewhere where history took place and where you know, one of the most significant civil rights leaders of our whole time is, you know, just being there in person and imagining that, you know, he was just there not too long ago, really, and it would make me emotional as well. So I'm so happy you had that experience, and I hope to have the same, you know, someday in the future.
Yeah, and you know, even if you're downtown, it was a walkable distance, which is good.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing this, Jennifer, and I hope you enjoyed today.
Oh, you know, coming from the Virgin Islands and learned all the things that you learned about him is really, really awesome. Yes, yeah.
Oh, I can see that. Thank you for sharing that information, and yeah, the perspective is very, very important, and to know about these things and to be aware. So I'm happy that it was useful for you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. You also have a great weekend.
You as well. Yeah, just by the way, Monday again, it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So, you know, for each and every holiday, I like to share a flyer. So I created this flyer, which you will all be receiving on Monday. Along with still with the daily email, you know, we'll have no sessions that day, of course, because it's a holiday, but I just wanted to show you all a little sneak peek. And this quote by Dr. King is important. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And let us continue to spread love and kindness towards one another. So just wanted to share that with you all. Last up for today is Miss Brenda. How's it going, Miss Brenda?
It's going good, Alex. It's always going good.
Awesome.
But you know what, my munchkins, I'm sure they'll be over this weekend. You know, they're going to be out of school. So I'm going to kind of quiz them on why they're out of school and if they're aware of Dr. Martin Luther King. So, you know, just teach them a few things about it, you know, and get my Jordan to draw. She can draw. She's 7 years old. She draws from memory. She has so much detail when she draws. So I enjoy watching her draw. But that's what I'm gonna do, you know. And I'll probably cook too. So that's what I'll be doing.
Yes, ma'am. And one thing I hope we can get this session onto our YouTube before Monday. I'll see if we can get an express order on that. So maybe you can go on the YouTube channel and watch this session with them, and I think that may be nice. So I'll see what I can do on that, and hopefully get that done.
I'm gonna look for it.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed today, Ms. Brenda. It was nice to hear from you.
I did. You know what? I enjoyed the last presentation you did on Dr. King, where we saw that movie. And, you know, it showed a lot of things that were going on in that town where he was jailed. And, you know, they had to count I don't know if it was gumballs or something in that bowl. You know, it was a lot of little things. I can't remember all of it right now, but
yeah,
it was a good movie. I enjoyed that.
It was
movie
Selma, Lord Selma. We did watch that last year. And the question was still in here. A part of this session came about due to that movie that we watched together. So didn't get a chance to this year. So that's why I try to supplement some additional information. But I remember that day very fondly.
Yeah.
And it just brings back memories, and you know, any opportunity that I get to just showcase some information that is all new. I mean, it's mostly new. It's all new basically to me though, because it's you know, been a while since I've been out of school. So just knowing these values and, you know, just reaffirming what had happened, and you know, so that way we could be grateful and thankful to what we have now, and the things that we can do versus not too long ago, but there's still a road to full equality out there. So any little step that we can do gets us a little bit closer.
Yes. And encourage folks to vote. I can't wait till it's time to vote. I mean, I look forward to it, and I talk to my friends, my relatives. Make sure you got, I mean, that's what you have to do. You got to encourage folks to vote. Your vote counts.
Yes.
You have to do it. So
have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I make sure my children, y'all better get out there and vote.
Yes, it's so important with what's about to come, you know, with our so you know, it's I hope that we can all just keep that in mind. And thank you so much for sharing, Brenda.
Sure.
Last but not least, because I just love all the conversation, is Yvonne. Thank you so much for raising your hand, Yvonne. I hope you're well.
I am, and thank you for a most inspirational presentation, Alex. And my comment is that it's so unfortunate that our young people no longer have civics and political science in school, because I dare say a lot of our teachers might not even vote. And how can you teach what you don't know? So it's unfortunate. They know nothing about the way our political system or constitution is organized, about the federal government or local government. So they don't have the wherewithal to appreciate the importance of voting. So I think it's unfortunate that we need to look at what's being taught in our schools, what the qualifications of the teachers might be, because they can't teach what they don't know. I listened to some of them speaking and the grammar that some of them use. And I said, oh my gosh, how can you teach your grandchildren and your children how to speak correctly when you don't even know? So there's a breakdown, and our country has been dumbed down. That's the best way I can put it, charitably. But we need to make some changes in the curricula of our young people and make some more demands of teachers for qualifications to teach. That's it.
Oh, I can understand why you say that. You know, if you're how do I say it? If you know, you got to be about it, you know, especially working as in a public school, you know, where everything is decided by your votes and who's running those organizations. So it has a domino effect. So it's just to talk about things like this and to just inform and to let others know where it could have been today if not for the individuals in our past, and to allow them to see how much we appreciate it and need it nowadays. So because we're able to do so much nowadays, and even if it may not be 100%, it's so much better than before. So it's just all about the gratefulness and thankfulness for our past and the folks that fought for our rights for today, right?
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, no problem, Yvonne. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you all for coming on to today's session. It was a lot of interesting questions and comments, and I learned so much from you all. And thank you so much for coming on to today's session. And you have some final words?
I have something final to say. Yvonne, I agree with you. When an 8-year-old child has to tell their first grade teacher that Jimmy Carter is not the first president of the United States, you know that we are definitely going backwards and not forward.
Mm-hmm. And again, that comes down to how, nowadays we have so much access to different education and material and information, with all of our devices and what we can do. So especially nowadays, it's so important to be informed. So that way you look like, and what you're saying and what you're doing. You have to have that background knowledge and information to be able to share correct and important information to others. So I think it's a message in doing your due diligence in life, not just with this, but with everything. It's important to try to understand as much as possible about the topic before you present it, so that way you can be as informed and also be able to learn more. Right, Anne?
That's right. I don't know what kind of teacher certificates they're giving out nowadays, but I know when I was in school, you had to learn stuff, and you didn't get your certificate until you passed that test. So I don't know what they're teaching these people nowadays, but they don't know how to cursive. They don't know anything about the history of the country or any other history around the world, and they don't know anything about the United States and how it was formed and what people went through to have the privileges that they have nowadays. And we still got to keep fighting.
Still got to keep fighting, keep speaking,
we got to keep fighting.
Informing,
that's
keep
right
informing, keep acknowledging, keep just mentioning, keep saying all that great stuff to make an impact in our community. So
sadly, that our children don't have grandparents and parents who know stuff. I was listening to someone on the radio this morning, and I'm going to shut up in a minute, but they were talking about Martin Luther King and some of the stuff that they didn't understand. And I was wondering, like, okay, where were you and what were you doing? Because you're around my age, and I'm sure you must have heard about some of this stuff, even if you couldn't participate in it. So, what is on your mind? And if these people would stop listening to all this rhetoric and crazy stuff, and try to pick up a book or pick up a iPad or a computer and go on and look on something sensible instead of foolishness, maybe when we wouldn't have so much killing and mayhem going on.
Yeah, education is key. I think that's the number one thing in my life that allowed me to progress as much as, you know, I've done in my life. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's very important for others. So it all starts with you and just sharing your knowledge, and whoever you share it to, hopefully they have the same sentiments to share that knowledge with others as well. Just like you have just done, Anne, and I appreciate your comments and your thinking. It's, you know, I wish everything was just right, you know, but
yeah, but it's
as
not,
humans,
and I know
we're very complex, you know, and it's just a lot of history is going on, right? You know, so it's if you deals with a lot of emotions and feelings and hardships and all that stuff, but we just have to fight and stick together and keep going to make us a better people and better humans overall, right?
That's true. And I thank you for the very informative information today. I had learned about the name Michael, the change, before I went on this morning, and I brought that to the attention of the morning crowd. Now I've read a lot of stuff on Martin Luther King. I have written papers on him, and I had never ever heard that his name was changed from Michael to Martin. So that was something, and I was glad you brought it up this time too.
Yes, so yes, that's a very little known fact.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you for all the knowledge that you tried to bring to us. We appreciate you learning with us so that you can inspire us. You're never too old to learn. And God bless you for being patient with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne. And I appreciate your kind words, and your words are very thoughtful and poignant. So thank you so much for sharing. I just want to say thank you all for coming on to today's session, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Okay.